Imagine a man who owned every grain of sand from the east to the west. A man whose name was whispered with both terror and awe. Thousands of years ago, in the ancient cradle of civilization, King Nimrod did what no mortal had ever dared. He looked at the vastness of the sky and decided it wasn't enough to rule the earth. He wanted the throne of the Creator himself. He built a tower so massive it pierced the clouds, and from its peak, he fired an arrow into the infinite blue. When that arrow fell back to the dust, it was dripping with blood. The city erupted in a chilling roar. "We have wounded the god of the sky!" But Nimrod didn't realize that his pride had just signed his death warrant. His downfall wouldn't come from a celestial thunderbolt or a rival empire. It would come from something so tiny, so insignificant, it's almost impossible to believe. This is the ultimate saga of the world's first tyrant, the rebel who defied him, and the fly that brought an empire to its knees. Before Rome, before Egypt's golden age, there was Babylon, and at the center of it all was Nimrod. He wasn't just a king, he was the architect of human ambition. Descended from the line of Noah, Nimrod was a mighty hunter, a man of such physical and intellectual prowess that people began to believe he was more than human. In those days, the world was a chaotic place, and Nimrod promised order. He built the first great cities, Uruk, Akkad, and Babylon. But as the stones of his palaces rose higher, his soul sank deeper into narcissism. He surrounded himself with the world's most cunning astrologers and sorcerers. They taught the people to worship the stars, the moon, and the shifting constellations. But Nimrod had a darker plan. He realized that if people worshiped the sun, they were looking away from him. So he forced his subjects to carve massive golden statues of himself. "Why look to the heavens for a provider," he argued, "when I am the one who feeds you, protects you, and gives you life?" He became the first human in recorded history to claim he was a god. To the world, he was an immortal sun king. To history, he was a warning of what happens when the human ego goes unchecked. At the height of his power, a single dream shattered Nimrod's peace. He saw a light, blinding and pure, descending from the highest heaven. It wasn't the warm light of the sun, it was a piercing glow that made his golden idols look like dull gray stones. One by one, his palaces crumbled under this light, until Nimrod was left standing alone in the dark. His royal seers trembled as they interpreted the vision. "A boy will soon be born in your kingdom. He will not carry a sword, but his words will shatter your idols and erase your name from history." The tyrant's response was a genocide. He ordered every newborn male in the empire to be slaughtered. He thought he could kill destiny. But hidden in a remote, cold cave, a woman named Amila gave birth to a son. She named him Abraham. While the world outside was drowning in the blood of infants, Abraham grew up in the silence of the earth, protected by a force Nimrod couldn't comprehend. Abraham didn't grow up like other children. In the solitude of his cave, he looked at the world with a philosopher's mind. When he finally stepped out and saw the night sky, he saw the North Star and thought, "This must be my Lord." But the star faded. He saw the moon and thought, "This is the Creator." But the moon set. He saw the sun, the most powerful force in nature, and thought, "This is it." But even the sun surrendered to the night. Abraham realized a profound truth. Anything that changes, fades, or disappears cannot be God. He understood that behind the stars and the sun, there was a master designer, the unseen power. He returned to Babylon, not as a warrior, but as a revolutionary. He watched his own father, Azar, carving wooden idols and felt a deep, painful irony. His father was creating the things people were supposed to worship. Abraham began to speak. He didn't preach, he asked questions. "Father, Why do you bow to something that can't hear your voice? Why do we fear statues that can't even swat a fly away?" His words were like sparks in a room full of gunpowder. The tension reached a breaking point during the city's great festival. As thousands of citizens marched out to the countryside to celebrate, the great temple of Babylon was left empty. Abraham saw his moment. He entered the sanctuary, a place filled with the smell of incense and the sight of hundreds of stone and gold idols. He looked at the food offerings placed before the statues. "Why don't you eat?" he whispered to the stone gods. "Why don't you speak?" Silence was his only answer. With a heavy iron axe, Abraham began to swing. He smashed the god of wealth. He shattered the god of war. One by one, the symbols of Nimrod's power were reduced to rubble. But he left the largest, most imposing statue untouched. He hung the blood-stained axe around its neck and walked out. When the city returned, the sight was devastating. Their protectors were in pieces. They dragged Abraham before King Nimrod. The atmosphere was electric. "Did you do this to our gods?" Nimrod roared, his voice shaking the palace walls. Abraham looked the king in the eye, something no one had ever dared to do, and pointed to the giant statue. "Why ask me? The big one is right there with the axe. Ask him if he can speak." The priests looked at each other in embarrassment. "You know these stones cannot speak, Abraham," they shouted. Abraham's voice rang out like a bell. "Then why do you worship things that cannot even defend themselves against a single man with an axe?" For the first time in 400 years, Nimrod had no answer. Nimrod couldn't allow this humiliation. To save his reputation, he ordered an execution that would be remembered for eternity. He didn't just want to kill Abraham, he wanted to erase him. He ordered the construction of a furnace so large it was like a mountain of wood. For 30 days, the people of Babylon gathered timber. When they lit it, the flames were so fierce that the heat could be felt miles away. Abraham was placed in a massive catapult, bound in heavy chains. As he was launched into the heart of the inferno, the world held its breath. But then a command was issued from the source of life itself. "O fire, be cool and a place of safety for Abraham." The crowd stood in stunned silence. They didn't see a man burning. They saw a man sitting peacefully in the middle of a glowing emerald garden. The laws of physics, the very fabric of reality, had been suspended. Nimrod watched from his balcony, his face turning pale. He realized he wasn't just fighting a man, he was fighting the power that invented the fire itself. Still, Nimrod's ego would not break. He challenged Abraham's God once more. "I defy your God. Let him fight me," he screamed. He gathered his entire army, millions of men in iron armor, horses, and chariots. It was the greatest military force the world had ever seen. Abraham stood alone before this wall of iron and said, "Wait, the army you challenged is coming." In the distance, a dark cloud appeared. It wasn't rain. It was a swarm of gnats, tiny, buzzing insects, millions of them. Nimrod's soldiers laughed. How could bugs fight an army? But as the swarm descended, the laughter turned to screams. The insects crawled into the armor, into the eyes, and into the lungs of the soldiers. They were like microscopic warriors. In hours, the invincible army of Babylon was a field of bones. Nimrod fled. He ran into his palace and locked every door, every window. He thought his thick walls could save him, but a single tiny crippled gnat, the smallest of the swarm, found a crack in the window. It flew into the king's chamber and crawled into his nostril. The gnat traveled deep into Nimrod's brain. It didn't kill him instantly. Instead, it began to buzz and bite. The pain was unbearable. It felt like a hot needle was being driven into his skull every second of every day. The man who claimed to be a god was now a slave to a bug. The only way to stop the pain was for his servants to hit him on the head. He would pay his guards to strike his skull with hammers and heavy shoes just to get a few seconds of relief from the buzzing. For the next 400 years, the same amount of time he had oppressed the world, Nimrod lived in this pathetic state. The crown that once symbolized his divinity was replaced by the constant blows of a hammer. Finally, during one of these sessions, a servant hit him so hard that his skull shattered. The immortal king died in a pool of his own humiliation, defeated by the smallest creature on earth. The story of Nimrod and Abraham is more than just ancient history. It is a mirror for our modern world. It teaches us that no matter how high we build our digital towers, no matter how much wealth we hoard, or how much power we think we have, we are fragile. Nimrod's empire is dust. Abraham's message of truth still echoes, because in the end, it's not the one with the biggest army who wins, it's the one who stands with the truth. And sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe is hidden in the smallest of things.